jest część trzecia analizy Pirate Software i mam kurwa nadzieję, że ostatnia, bo szczerze wam powiem, że ten temat się ciągnie mega długo i gdyby nie to, że ja się w niego wcześniej wkręciłem, to bym już pewnie dalej tego nie oglądał, ale powiem wam szczerze, że dla mnie przypadek tego człowieka jest po prostu fascynujący. To znaczy, to jest typ, który skutecznie, ja w ogóle inaczej, ja sobie odgrzeję dip do naczosów, ja będę sobie kurwa chrupał naczosy w trakcie filmu i nic mi nie zrobicie. Pirate Software, bo trochę już zgubiłem wątek. Pirate Software to jest taki gość, który skutecznie przekonał wszystkich, że będąc osobą o przeciętnej inteligencji, jak nie poniżej nawet przeciętnej inteligencji, przekonał wszystkich, że jest tak naprawdę geniuszem objawionym. I ja już to widziałem dużo wcześniej na przykład, bo mnie zawsze rozpierdalały te jego shorty z game developmentu, gdzie on mówi, każdy może zostać game developerem. Ja tak patrzę na to i myślę sobie, ni chuja, nie każdy. I on mówi, każdy może zostać game developerem, po prostu wymyśl grę i ją zrób. I on mówi ludziom, że on kurwa uczy game developmentu. No, znajdź pomysł na grę i ją zrób. Stary, do roboty. Wymyśl, co chcesz namalować na płótnie i to namaluj. Poradniki masz w internecie. Nie ma sprawy, dzięki, jakby nauczyłem cię. Just do it. Ziomek jest najwyżej mówcą motywacyjnym.
A bit of a note before we continue.
Napisy.
Most of Jason's hacking claims are mainly stories.
I teraz gadamy o tym, że on jest hakerem, bo on lubi też się chwalić, że on jest hakerem, kurwa, rozumiecie? Gdzie napisy?
A bit of a note before we continue. Most of Jason's hacking claims are mainly stories, with him being the only source of truth for a lot of them. So for most of this video, I'll just be explaining and teaching about the terms used and how these things generally go, instead of making judgments like the previous two parts. Well, maybe a few minor judgments. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's start going through it. Let's start by...
Kurwa, napisów nie ma, gdzie one są? Opcje. Kurwa, resetuj, gdzie one są?
Bringing up the old VX Underground tweet.
Dobra,
that Jason
musimy
responded
z
to,
angielskimi
and recheck his
napisami.
YouTube short on his experience while he was at Blizzard.
I was one of the guys sitting there pulling down every bot that worked for every MMO that we worked on, everything at Blizzard, grabbed every single one of those, pulled it out into assembly, grabbed the code key from it, removed the polymorphic, found a way to fit it into Word.
Okay, so from this clip, we got a lot of stuff to go over and cover. First, Jason worked on anti-cheat at Blizzard, and he dealt with bots. Plus, he did reverse engineering on the bots too, based on his comments. He also worked with Warden, which was Blizzard's anti-cheating tool that was directly integrated into games like World of Warcraft. The way Warden worked was, while you were playing the game, Warden would be running and using native API function calls from your system to collect data on your computer. This would include things such as what programs you had open while
ja wiem,
playing.
że jest opcja przetłumaczona, ona kurwa nie działa. To się napisy nie pojawiają. Zobacz, polski i znikają.
It would hash that work was, while you were playing the game, Warden would be running and using native API function calls from your system to collect data on your computer. This would include things such as what programs you had open while playing the game. It would hash the data it collected and periodically would send it up to Blizzard servers, where they would try to determine if you were running any known cheating programs on your system while playing the game. It also has some malware detection built into it too, apparently. It could detect stuff like keyloggers and warn you if your system had been affected. It probably has a lot more functionality and abilities, but we'll need real Blizzard employees to talk about those details. Back to the short comments. Jason also pulled down tons of bots, pulled them all out into assembly, grabbed their code cave, removed the polymorphic, and then fit all this back into Warden somehow. Now, the issue with this clip is, while all these terms make sense on their own kind of, together this ends up sounding like weird nonsense he made up. This is why the VX Underground Twitter account is calling Jason out in the tweet. Also, for anyone that doesn't know what VX Underground is, it's a site that possibly holds the world's largest public collection of malware source code, samples, and papers. This is an incredibly popular site that many real hackers and security researchers use to find, study, and explore viruses.
No dobra, czyli to jest po prostu takie jakby repozytorium ze znanymi wirusami. Dobra. Rozumiem.
The Twitter account of VX Underground are almost all going to be people within the field that actually really know their stuff. Now, let's go and explore what the code cave term means from the wiki link Jason has posted as a response. If we look at the opening line on the wiki link, it basically says it refers to a section of unused bytes inside a process memory. So what this means is when we have a program active, we want to check and see if there's basically an empty continuous block of memory within it. If we manage to find an empty section, we can directly modify it with the debugger and add some new instructions to the program's execution. The advantages for this approach are the modifications are quick and easy to include, and you just need the application itself to check for this. None of the original source code is required. The downsides are, in many cases, this will result in a modified executable, which can cause the program to crash or malfunction depending on what was done. And the biggest issue, the amount of empty space you'll have to work with is going to be incredibly limited, meaning how much ad hoc stuff you can add here is going to be extremely small. Normally, you'd never use CodeCave to try and do a complex hack or add program behavior inside it.
Ale kurwa, nie myślałem, że to będzie, wiecie, jakaś analiza na zasadzie, że my pośmiejemy się z ziomeczka trochę, wiecie, takiego szponciku zrobimy, a tu się okazuje, że gość się kurwa faktycznie zna na rzeczy. I on opowiada o jakichś faktycznych rzeczach, których ja nie rozumiem.
The code cave, you'd use the code cave area to try and find a way to call
Ale
a
dobrze,
separate
dowiemy się
DLL
czegoś.
file where you'd have your actual hack or bot code logic located in for this context. And the code cave would just act as the entry point for this DLL injection. Also, let me explain what a dynamic link library or DLL file is too. Just like how you have an executable that's filled with compiled code that your system can run directly, DLL files also include compiled code. The major difference is DLLs are a separate file and they can be used by multiple other applications. For example, the code to create a window on the Windows operating system exists in a DLL file and other programs use it. Another big thing is, like the name implies with dynamic, the code inside a DLL can change, and the main program the next time it uses DLL will run that new code. Back to the code cave. I was also curious where the
Ja jedyne co wiem o plikach DLL, to że kiedyś jak chciałeś cheatować na przykład w Garry's Modzie, to używałeś injektora, gdzie ten hack był zapisany w tym DLL-u i on był w stanie odpalić tego DLL-a wewnątrz jakiegoś innego programu. I to tyle wiem.
Code cave is normally used, since this is a pretty unusual and not often used hacking term. From what I found, it seems to be incredibly popular within the cheat engine user-based circles.
Okay.
For those that don't know what cheat engine is, it's a program that allows you to view an active game's memory and modify the memory values directly. So let's say you were playing a single-player offline game and you opened up cheat engine. You could do some simple stuff like find your character's health memory value or level and set them to the max. You could also try doing the code cave stuff by finding that area of unused.
Kurwa, cheat engine jest w stanie robić dużo więcej. Na przykład, nie wiem czy wiecie, ale do tej pory da się cheat engine'em odpalać, znaczy zmieniać wartości waluty premium w Mass Effectie trójce. Bo w Mass Effectie trójce był ten multiplayer i tam były, wiecie, można było sobie walutę kupić. I autentycznie da się to kurwa zedytować cheat engine'em, bo ona jest z jakiegoś powodu lokalnie przechowywana. I to działa, jakby po prostu odpalasz, działa. Tak samo Bloons TD chyba można skakować. Code Cave to wolne miejsce w pamięci. Mówienie, że szukasz zrobionych hacków w Code Cave, to jest jakbyś nazwał zaparkowany samochód parkingiem. Zasadniczo wykorzystywanie pustych luk w pamięci wykorzystywanej przez program, aby wstrzyknąć nam swój kod. Nie coś, co można zrobić inżynierką wsteczną na bocie. Okej.
Memory and try to create a custom hack there. The hack would be fairly limited and simple due to size constraints though. Think something like a God mode toggle. Now, while Cheat Engine can help you screw around with single player offline games, it's not exactly a good tool to use with MMOs like World of Warcraft. The reason is with offline games, all the logic, updates, and variables are only on your system. This is what we call client side. So if something is modified
I
with
dlatego właśnie to było tak dziwne, że mogłem sobie tej waluty dodać na multiplayerze w Mass Effectie, że ta waluta była przechowywana kurwa po stronie klienta, to jest bez sensu.
Cheat Engine, there shouldn't be any big problems since there's nothing else that needs to verify these values and data besides the game itself on your system. With MMOs and online games, on the other hand, the sets of in general being a very different story. MMOs have both a client side and a server side component to them. What this means is while the client side can be the game executable, which will be responsible while it's running to handle stuff like drawing and rendering the game itself, the server will be where the actual logic and values are being executed, read, and set to a database. Meaning, if you make changes on your side in this case, then when those values are sent up to the server to update and save, they'll more than likely have lots of checks in place to prevent getting bogus values and to stop cheating. This is very basic when dealing with online requests. Pretty much all servers are built with the idea of never trusting anything a client sends to it, meaning all the values that are made up with Cheat Engine and sent should be checked and verified again on the server before proceeding within a well-built server application. So let's say someone tried to go from level 1 to level 99 in World of Warcraft. When the level up event happens and the data is sent to the server will more than likely do something like the following. It will read the current database value that has your level, then it will check your level or the XP amount you currently have and the projected amount you've sent. Then it will probably have some safety and anti-cheating checks. For example, something like if you're leveling up multiple times in one sent data packet to the server, that's a pretty clear sign you're cheating and it could flag you and have you banned at this point. Another example, if you tried sending an insanely high EXP amount that should be impossible to get through legitimate means playing the game, the server might realize you're cheating and ban you, or they might have a safety check and cap the EXP value to something more normal and sane for the game. Regardless.
Znaczy, powiem wam na przykład ze swojej strony też, że tak, takie checki to jest coś, co się robi nawet kiedy tworzycie jakieś proste mody. To znaczy, na przykład w Garry's Modzie, jeżeli serwer nie jest odpowiednio zabezpieczony, to bardzo łatwo można symulować połączenie między klientem a serwerem. To znaczy, serwer ma pewne wiadomości, które możecie wywołać za sprawą odpowiednich działań klienta. Czyli na przykład macie interfejs, na którym macie przycisk. To teoretycznie jesteście w stanie wgrać skrypt z waszego dysku, który będzie informował serwer, że wcisnęliście jakiś przycisk, mimo tego, że go realnie nie wcisnęliście, ale będzie wysyłał dokładnie tą samą wiadomość internetową. No i da się przed tym zabezpieczyć na naprawdę wielu płaszczyznach. Chociażby jesteście w stanie zweryfikować sobie, czy na przykład ten interfejs, w którym powinien być ten przycisk, jest aktualnie renderowany. Możecie sobie zweryfikować, na przykład, jeżeli ten interfejs jest powiązany z jakimś NPC-em, to możecie sprawdzić na przykład, czy gracz stoi wystarczająco blisko tego NPC-a, z którym powinien teoretycznie rozmawiać, wciskając przycisk w interfejsie. Macie pełno takich pomniejszych czeków, które sprawdzają po prostu, żeby ktoś nie był w stanie tego wyeksploitować, żeby zrobić jakiś nieskończony hack. I wydaje mi się, że to jest całkowita podstawa tworzenia jakiegokolwiek skryptu w grze multiplayerowej albo nawet singleplayerowej. Czyli robienie takich zabezpieczeń, żeby nie dało się tego oszukać najprostszym możliwym sposobem. Nie wiem tylko, co to ma do rzeczy jakby w szerszym materiale, ale pewnie zaraz się dowiemy.
What is actually happening within the server logic and what they have in place, the cheat engine approach wouldn't really work in most cases since the modified values aren't being used and saved directly on your system, but on the Blizzard servers, which as I just explained will have its own numerous ways of checking and determining if these cheat value changes are actually valid or not. So if cheat engine isn't a good option for online games and MMOs, how do people cheat, make hacks, and bots for them then? Well, we're in luck. We don't have to guess or speculate. Since at DEF CON itself, many famous WoW hackers are there as speakers and actually nicely explain all this stuff for us. Notably, a few good talks to check out are DEF CON 19, Hacking MMORPGs for Fun and Profit, DEF CON 15, Virtual World Real Hacking, and DEF CON 17, Subverting World of Warcraft. Also, a quick fun fact as part of the DEF CON 19 talk, Michael Donnelly is a co-guest speaker. For anyone who doesn't know who that is, he's the creator and owner of MDY Industries, and by extension, the creator of Glider, one of the most famous and successful WoW bots. He was raking in around 4 million at his peak, and then he got sued by Blizzard and was made to pay 6 million in damages. Anyways, back to the type of hacks, bots.
Kurwa, nie wiem, czego on się spodziewał. Jak można zarabiać na cheatach miliony dolarów i liczyć na to, że firma, w której produkt niejako niszczysz, cię kurwa nie pozwie? No to chyba musisz naprawdę tworzyć cheaty do Tarkowa tylko i wyłącznie, to by tak działało.
Methods used for WoW. We have a few major types to go over. First, we have the GUI-based macro systems. These are some of the easiest type of bots to make. Basically, you'll have a completely separate program viewing the WoW game window and looking at the various parts of the game screen. Depending on what pixel color your program sees at different spots, different actions will be performed by sending the keystrokes mimicking player behavior to your WoW client. So, for example, if you were grinding, you might have the bot casting an area effect spell every few seconds, and when your health and mana bars change color, the bot will know to use your potions to keep the character live to continue making grinding possible. Another popular type of bot design is done through
to o tym mówiłem.
This was a hack method I mentioned during the code cave explanation. This is another super convenient method and has few benefits. Since it's running with the game itself, it can have access to data structures and other important info from the game directly, allowing these type of bots to be a lot smarter and more sophisticated than the GUI macro ones. Next, we have the debugger-based ones. These are less detectable than the other types technically, since with these you'd attach debugger and use breakpoints and remote process memory to control things within the game.
No w TF-ie był ogromny problem z botami, ale to też dlatego, że Valve miało wyjebane. A w CS-ie jest ogromna scena HVH z kolei. I ja na przykład nie wiem, dlaczego oni to trzymają. Wiem na przykład, dlaczego to trzymają na Tarkowie. Bo ja o tym nie mówiłem w filmie, bo nie byłem w stanie znaleźć żadnego potwierdzenia dla tego, więc to, co teraz wam powiem, jest taką w dużym stopniu spekulacją. Tylko teraz tak. Istnieje podobno gdzieś jakiś wywiad z Nikitą, czyli z deweloperem Tarkowa, który mówi o tym, że oni specjalnie nie banują cheaterów, ponieważ wiedzą, że większość osób cheatuje, żeby uprawiać RMT. Na jakiej zasadzie? No na zasadzie takiej, że ziomek wykupuje sobie usługi cheatera, cheater mu czyści lobby, na wallhacku znajduje razem z nim itemy, ziomek, który wykupił usługę, zbiera sobie itemy i wychodzi z rajda z zerowym zagrożeniem. I to było mega ciekawe, bo on mówi, że on właśnie celowo nie banuje ich od razu, w sensie, że anti-cheat ich flaguje, ale on celowo nie banuje ich od razu, żeby oni mogli zarobić na tym RMT pieniądze, żeby kupić kolejną kopię gry. I ja nie mogłem znaleźć tego wywiadu, ale bardzo dużo osób wspomina o tym, że on istnieje i bardzo dużo osób o nim mówi. Może ktoś, jeżeli to ogląda na YouTubie, to będzie mu się chciało tego poszukać. To nie jest w 100% potwierdzona informacja. Ja bym to bardziej uznał jako taką miejską legendę, bo ja kurwa tego znaleźć nie mogłem.
This wasn't something that was really done or used, more so a method that existed that some experimented with. Also, a quick aside, back to Jason's grab the code cave comment, this debugger method is technically the closest to his code cave definition, but with the rest of his comments and description, this still doesn't sound quite right in his context. I'll explain more about this at the end. Anyways, back to the bot types. Then we have the client replacement types. These ones are huge amounts of work and generally aren't the first bot type anyone will make. Generally for this type, you already have a successful bot going and you know how much you can auto farm, sell, and by extension profit off of. So now you'd make a client replacement to maximize the amount of bots you can run on your computers or servers so you'd be able to maximize your profits. This was an incredibly popular approach in China since there was a much larger WoW gold buying and selling economy there, whereas outside of China there was a larger bot buying economy, roughly speaking. For more trivial hacks and simpler bots, there's also the option of using custom written Lua scripts. WoW includes Lua as their scripting language of choice and exposes various API options to customize certain things about the game, UI being one example. A side effect of having Lua included is a lot of function names will be in plain text and easier to search for, meaning you can try to hijack or use them for hacks purposes. With those bot
No
explanations
ale
out of the way,
do czego WoW w ogóle używa Lua tak realnie? W sensie, ja wiem, że w WoWie są jakieś mody, ale one chyba są wszystkie takie, kurwa, one nic nie zmieniają. W sensie, jakie macie mody w WoWie, które... Nie wiem, ja nie grałem w WoWa za dużo, co nie? Ja mam może z 10-15 godzin w WoWie. Tylko interfejs. Okej, dobra.
I think it's largely safe to assume the type of bots Jason was dealing with at Blizzard were most likely the DLL injection type since he was pulling them out into assembly. Plus, the DLL approach was the most common method used by the bot makers during this time period, and we have some confirmation from the DEF CON talks for this too. Now, let's go back to Jason's polymorphic code phrase. If we look back at his tweet, we have a big problem here. Jason says polymorphism can be described as polymorphic code. The problem is these are two completely separate concepts and terms. Polymorphism is a program term, and polymorphic code is a virus term. Let's start with the polymorphism explanation first. Let's say we're back in C++ land again, and we have a class called animal, and it has a function called talk. Now let's say we create two other animal classes based on the initial animal class. Let's say we have a dog class with a talk function that says woof, and a cat class with a talk function that says meow. Now let's say we have a list of cats and dogs. What we can do, since both classes are based on an animal, we can grow through them generically and call talk on each animal type of object in the list. Since each one will have their own unique talk function, the behavior of the program will change depending if the dog is saying woof or the cat is saying meow. Now, one thing to note, polymorphism will change the behavior a function has within the context of the code. It won't change the assembly structure of a program, since both talk functions will be compiled into assembly and be within the executable itself. Now, there is also such a thing as polymorphic code, or more specifically
O której
polymorphic
planowane
virus.
Stalker pewnie po tym filmie.
Basically, some malware
Co jeśli BSG ma jakichś Black Opsów, którzy prowadzą Tarkoferem tylko po to, żeby więcej szekli wydoić? Kurwa, nie zdziwiłbym się.
can change its own code by using a mutation engine to mutate itself. Basically, each copy of the virus will have its own unique key to decrypt its code payload in slightly different ways to make detection harder. For example, let's use basic math examples to show what I mean. Let's say we want to get the number 4 by using two numbers. We basically have infinite options. We can do 3 plus 1, 2 plus 2, 6 minus 2, 14 minus 10. All of these will result in 4, even if the expressions are different. The end result will be the same. This is basically what's happening with the polymorphic viruses. It's doing the same operations, but with slightly different semantics to make it harder to detect. Now, you might be asking, if the virus is still doing the same thing, why doesn't anti-cheat or antivirus manage to detect it? So I'll give a quick rundown of some simple methods antiviruses and anti-cheat use to detect threats. Most antivirus and anti-cheat tools will check for a few quick and basic things, like the ID or name of an application. Another way these tools will detect malware is they have a huge database worth of assembly and script blocks that are commonly used in malware. So when they're checking over a program and they detect a matching block of code to their database blocks, they can be pretty sure the program is malware. Okay, with all those explanations out of the way, let's go through Jason Short again piece by piece now.
I was one of the guys sitting there pulling down every bot that worked for every MMO that we worked on, everything at Blizzard, grabbed every single one of those, pulled it out into assembly.
All right, so we managed to get his hands on the bot programs and I was doing reverse engineering and trying to debug them directly in assembly. This makes sense so far, with the most likely bot
Ty,
types
ale
being
w
the
ogóle takie pytanie. Dlaczego on to robił, jeżeli on się kurwa w tej firmie zajmował testowaniem gier i męczeniem stażystów, wysyłając im jakieś lewe linki, żeby dostać ich hasło? To coś mi się kurwa nie zgadza. Dobra, nie rozumiem, powiedz, wytłumacz. On miał tytuł pracownika Blizzarda. Okej. Projekt na boczku, bankcard tak zwany. Miał za dużo wolnego czasu, już w całej firmie zrobił kawę, to musi się czas.
DLL injection once again.
Grabbed the code key from it.
And we have a problem. The code key being used inside the bot would not matter at all. A code key's purpose is to inject or call other code inside the program. The bot makes
Czyli on po prostu na tym klipie używa jak największej ilości programistycznych buzzwordów, tylko potem się okazuje, że to, co mówi, nie do końca ma sens. Tak. Ej, a ten... To w sumie zabawnie się składa, wiecie, bo jest jeszcze jeden taki ziomek, który też tak robi.
Jest napisane. Ostrzeżenia. System może osiągnąć bardzo wysokie poziomy energii. System! Nie mówimy tutaj teraz o... czym? System Windows może osiągnąć bardzo...
Ale wiecie, no, jakby on miał minimalnie lepszy mikrofon i głębszy głos, to Makailer mógłby dosłownie robić identyczne streamy, kurwa, jak Pirate Software. I to by było bardzo podobne, no bo jakby nie patrzeć, oni we dwójkę nie są w stanie do niczego dojść. I oni we dwójkę nic kurwa nie programują.
Don't need to hack their own bot program to run code. This doesn't make any sense at all. The code caves would exist inside the Blizzard game files, not inside the bots. Also, you wouldn't be grabbing a code cave from anything. If you have a debugger open and checking a program in memory, you're already in the area and tooling to look for the code cave. Again, you'd be looking for a small area of unused memory. There's nothing here to grab. He's using the term even in his own statement and context incorrectly. And even if you applied it to the correct contents of the Blizzard game files, it still wouldn't make any sense. So let's drop this and go to the next bit.
Remove the polymorphic.
Okay, let's be charitable and say these bots were all made similar to polymorphic viruses. They weren't, but whatever. If you're studying the bot, you'd probably find the obfuscation and check to see how it's decrypted. You wouldn't be removing the polymorphic in this case. If you're ripping out the assembly instructions from the program, you're basically just left with a copy of the bot program, empty and useless. There's really no situation where you as the researcher and anti-cheat guy would be required to do this. So in all contexts, this doesn't make any sense either. Let's go back and finish up the clip now.
Found a way to fit it into Warden.
Okay, now how would you fit this into an anti-cheat tool like Warden? Since it works similar to an antivirus, you'd probably want to copy the common code block patterns you see in the bot into Warden. You'd also want to add other simple detection methods to Warden, like the name of the program or signatures related to it. You wouldn't need to remove the polymorphic, you just copied over parts of it and saved the instructions into the Warden database. So in the future, you could try and detect some users of this specific bot. If we're being charitable, we could say Jason misspoke multiple times in a row in that sentence, and he wanted to say something like the following. We got our hands on a lot of bot programs, and most of them were of the DLL injection type, with the injection method used being exploiting the Blizzard game files directly. The bot makers were smart and added polymorphic payloads to make detection difficult, but we managed to find unique enough patterns to add to Warden to make detection of this bot type possible. Do I think he knew this is what he was trying to say? Well, I think it's pretty clear if you watched my previous videos where I explain how poor his coding abilities are and understanding, or if you watched any of his multiple puzzle game streams where you see him cheating constantly. I think you won't be surprised when I say hell no. And I assume he had no clue what he was trying to say either.
Jak ty gadasz, że on... Czy on naprawdę cheatował w Outer Wildsach? Przecież Outer Wilds to jest chyba jedna z najlepszych, ale także najprostszych gier logicznych, jakie kurwa istnieją. I jaja se robicie ze mnie? Naprawdę? Czy to jest... O! To jest Destiny? No i wreszcie jakiś rzetelny streamer.
Ingenious.
If I look away from it now, it's still there. The camera works. We can pause it to stay in place permanently because we're looking at it. Technically. That portal no longer moves. A little too early.
649.52 is more blatant.
A little too early. Just a tad.
No i co się dzieje? Aha, że on czyta kurwa z telefonu.
There's no way that he would be this blatant about it though, right? Like he's clearly looking at his phone.
Ej, kiedyś też tak miałem na jednym streamie, że generalnie ja lubię lecieć w chuja z widzami. I kiedyś był taki stream, którego już nie ma zapisu. I jak graliśmy w Soulsy i... A może i był... On... Nie, tego nie ma. No to to zarządzaj filmami, poczekajcie chwilę. I pamiętam, graliśmy w DS-y 3 i nie mogłem znaleźć ogniska i wtedy jeszcze byłem fałtuberem. To był pierwszy film na kanale, taki na poważnie zrobiony. O, nazwijmy to tak. No, więc ja tu grałem w DS-y.
Tak czy inaczej.
I jak przeszliśmy do tego obszaru, o tu jakoś, ja szukałem ogniska przez kurwa bardzo długo. I nie mogłem go znaleźć. I tu jest taka scena, jak ja je w końcu znajduję. O, tutaj. To ja go nie znalazłem sam. Ja wyszukałem mapę na Google'u. I I nikt nie wiedział, kurwa, bo jeszcze wtedy w ogóle bez kamerki. Żaden. Więc tak, oszukałem widzów w roku 2024 w styczniu, czyli na przełomie. Doszło do polecenia w chuja, jak Pirate Software. No. I ja myślę, ja tak szczerze uważam, że większość streamerów tak robi. Może wiecie, może mierzę wszystkich swoją miarą, może tak jest, ale myślę, że większość streamerów leci w chuja na takiej zasadzie.
Game files directly. The bot makers were smart and added polymorphic payloads to make detection difficult, but we managed
No, tu
Hell no.
skończyliśmy.
And I assume he had no clue what he was trying to say either. What I think is likely, he was just tossing around hacking terms he's probably heard thrown around by the actual devs working on Warden anti-cheat during his time at Blizzard. Moving on to another topic, let's leave the polymorphic and code cave stuff behind us fully, and let's move to another clip everyone has been
Ale
asking me to
mnie
review.
na przykład zastanawia, po co robić coś takiego? W sensie, wiecie, Lucky Luke jest odklejony. Jakbym doktor habilitowany McKayler to jest polski Terry Davis, schizofrenik. Ale w przypadku, gdy zgrywasz mądrale i zaczynasz używać, kurwa, wyobraźcie sobie na przykład, że ja bym zaczął gadać z wami o muzyce i zacząłbym mówić o tym, że kwinty się nie zgadzają w masteringu i dlatego cała postprodukcja utworu jest, kurwa, na jakiejś niższej fazie. I jeżeli bym to powiedział z wystarczającą pewnością siebie, to bardzo możliwe, że ktoś by mi uwierzył w to, że ja wiem, o czym mówię. Ale myślę, że by tak minęło 2 godziny od uploadu i znalazłby się już ktoś, kto by powiedział: stary, pierdolisz głupoty. Więc co on sobie, kurwa, myślał tak szczerze? To mnie po pierwsze zastanawia, rzucając takimi terminami bez pokrycia, a po drugie zastanawia mnie, dlaczego to zajęło tak długo, żeby ktoś nagrał taki materiał. W całej tej serii oglądania mnie strasznie bawi, że ty go tak bronisz, a wam powiem... Ja go bronię, kurwa? Ja go bronię? Co ty piszesz? Ja go bronię? Co? Nie no, kurwa, w jaki sposób? Jak z tym cheatowaniem? Jakim, kurwa, cheatowaniem? Inni streamerzy... Ja ci podaję ciekawostkę! Ja ci podaję ciekawostkę, kurwa! Ja go nie bronię, jebać go za to! Tylko różnica jest taka, jak wyszukasz sobie ognisko, kurwa, na mapce, a inną rzeczą jest to, jak przechodzisz 10. grę logiczną z rzędu i przekonujesz wszystkim, że jesteś najmądrzejszą, kurwa, osobą w historii. Większość jego widowni to nie są programiści, a na jego dev streamie połowa czasu to patrzenie na jego subką. Ja wiem, ale przecież on robi te shorty. I te shorty idą dalej. One mają miliony wyświetleń. Kurwa, zobaczcie sobie, jakie viewsy robią te jego shorty. Popularne. 21 milionów, 20 milionów, 19 milionów. I to jest o hakowaniu. 18 milionów, 14 milionów. No, sorry, to jest mega dużo. W ogóle na żywo jest. Kurwa, patrzcie, pisze kod. Nie no, czemu? Co ty robisz, kurwa? Nie kasuj to. Ty, bana dostał, czy sam wyparował? Zniknął, kurwa. Jezu, jak on ma, stary, zdislajkowane te streamy. Jak to na Twitchu wygląda? HakeRem co to w ogóle, kurwa, za strona? Już ma moje IP. O, na Twitcha przekierowuję. 5000 widzów tutaj, a tam na YouTubie 500. No niech będzie i tak. Dobra, jebać to.
His next hero hackerman story of defeating an evil rogue hacker using a Stingray.
I turned in a guy to the FBI when I was at DEF CON 24, I think it was. He walked into the room at the lost room. That was the year that I had the key. And he walked into the room and he's like,
Jezu, Carnage, stary. Dobrze się dobrali.
I need to put this device plugged into the wall under there. And I was like, you ain't doing that, man. And he goes, lost set, I couldn't. I was like, all right, fine, go plug it in. And he plugged it in, put it under the couch. The moment he left the room, I unplugged it, pulled it apart. And it was, you ever heard of a Stingray? So this guy tried to set one of these up in an environment with tens of thousands of people on a little thing about this big. In front of me. Yeah, it was great. Really smart.
Yeah,
He had done this in
Co, kurwa? Ja nie rozumiem, co on
a number
mówi.
of locations. The other 2 devices that he had put out had actually been out and deployed, which was a security risk.
Jesus.
I took the device immediately, dumped all the information off of it. I actually looked at it. It had 4 screws on one side and 3 on the other side, so I knew which side was the access point that he was accessing because he had dropped a screw, which was thankful because things like this could be trapped. You know, there's all kinds of crazy that people can do. Opened it up on the other side, took out the SIM card that was in it, took out the memory card that was in that, popped the memory card in my machine to go look at the logs the guy had through it, and I was like, oh, this is really bad. Took all that, took it to the FBI contact, sat in a room for like 4 hours.
Ziomek, kurwa, opowiada o tym, jakby bombę rozbroił na lotnisku.
They found the guy, he revealed where the other devices were, they arrested him, that was the end of it. And I think they gave me a challenge
Carnage zawsze ma taką minę akurat, jakby coś bardzo, jakby miał tęgą rozkminę.
for that. I think I got an FBI challenge going for that one.
So a Stingray was originally a specific device created by the Harris Corporation, which would intercept and eavesdrop on mobile phone traffic and location data. It was essentially a fake mobile tower, acting as an in-between the target mobile phone and the real service provider towers.
Okay.
This is what's considered a man-in-the-middle attack. These devices are in widespread use by law enforcement agencies across various countries, notably the USA, the UK, and Canada. These days, though, Stingray has become a generic generic name to describe these types of mobile phone intercept devices and not just the original Harris unit. Now, there's a few holes in Jason's story surrounding this. First of all, he sounds unsure if he won an FBI challenge coin or not, which I think is a pretty big issue. My reason being is he constantly shows off his DEF CON badges and wins. Like going to his Potato Sack Twitter account, his pinned message is DEF CON badge wins. If we go to his main Pirate Software Twitter account, every time he gets criticized or questioned, he pulls out his DEF CON badges and wins. His LinkedIn also has all 3 badges included in his honors. His Reddit intro posts also have his DEF CON badge win. He shows them off multiple times on stream and posts about them multiple times per year. I'm not blaming or holding this against him. Feel free to be proud of the stuff you got. The issue I
Kurwa,
have...
może ja też powinienem wziąć udział w czymś takim. Może bym się nauczył hakowania z jego porad.
is if he's willing to showcase his
Hakowanie z jego porad to jest tak. Wejście na czat i zapytanie: siema, ma ktoś ekipę hakerską na turniej, żeby mógł się podłączyć i nic nie robić?
DEF CON badges and wins basically at a minimum of like 4 to 5 times per year, every single year. Why has he never shown his FBI challenge coin? I even managed to find him showing off his Blizzard Battle.net coin, but nothing related to the FBI coin. Considering how much he loves to share his achievements in personal life, he would have shared or talked about the Stingray and the FBI challenge coin at some other point besides this one podcast clip. Next issue with the story is there's no other record or people to corroborate the story. I couldn't find any mentions of a widespread mobile attack at DEF CON during any of the years he was present there. Lost, the owner of the room Jason was staying at while this happened, doesn't seem to have posted anything about it either. No other attendees mentioned there being any other Stingray devices noticed either. It's hard to imagine a tech conference with more than thousands of people that are all largely tech literate and knowing to practice device safety, and no one besides Jason noticed someone trying to monitor their phones with the Stingray. It's just way too hard to believe. I'll cut this part short since beside the clip I couldn't find any other info tied to this. Given how often Jason lies and over-exaggerates different stories, I'm inclined to say he's lying on this one too, since nothing about it seems true and there's absolutely nothing I can find to even suggest it might have happened. Moving to the next topic, we'll return to his time at Eagle Research Group, or as he referred to it, his government hacking. Now, if we refer back to his LinkedIn, we can see he did the following: penetration testing, working with sensitive networks, and develop custom tools. Now, we have a few clips to check out. First one.
My general wheelhouse control is physical access control systems, so breaking and entering, Wi-Fi related vulnerabilities, web related vulnerabilities, and social engineering. So those were my primaries when we were on those tasks.
Okay, so he did physical access controls, Wi-Fi network checks, and
Ja kurwa, on tyle słów używa na... No sorry, no jakby...
Patrz, co tu jest napisane.
social engineering. Okay, that's slightly different from what he wrote, but that's fine. Let's check the second clip.
So your government is, dude, honestly, working with the government sucks ass. They pay more than God.
Ej, w ogóle mega beka. Mega beka, stary, bo my ostatnio byliśmy na jego streamie. Jakoś tak, wiecie, weszliśmy na jego Twitcha, żeby wejść w pierwszy lepszy WOD. I on przez 3 godziny patrzył dokładnie na tą tabelkę w Excelu. Kurwa, w ogóle są jakieś rozpiski, jakby on projektował levelowanie w hack and slashu. On tworzy fabularną podróbkę Undertale'a, ludzie.
When you're a federal contractor, but holy shit, is it not fun. You ever publish a CV? No, not at all, man. Like, most pen testing, this is the saddest, shittiest truth. If you are a pen tester or a federal contractor pen tester, you are running scanners, and you're bored out of your freaking mind. Like, it is not engaging at all. There's very few times you're like, I get to do something cool today. It's usually like, oh, cool, I'm wearing a suit, I run a shitty scanner, I put together a report, I go home. Yeah, it's 99% writing. It is literally 99% writing. Yeah, it's not fun. I wish it was cool.
Okay, running scans to test for vulnerabilities and then writing reports, again, sounds fine. The only problem I have is, every single time I managed to find something about him explaining what kind of hacking he did, he changes the
był facetem w CIA. No. A pamiętacie, co Terry Davis mówił o CIA?
story and the things he was responsible for, but I digress. Anyways, let's talk about physical security hacking and testing for a tiny bit. Physical testing is actually pretty straightforward and direct. You're basically going to go around and check every fire, exit, or entrance, or other possible entry point to see if any are open. Are there any points of entry that aren't guarded or locked? In fact, DEF CON has a couple of great talks on this exact topic. One of my favorite stories from these talks is how to defeat those glass office double doors you see at most modern office buildings, with the little keycard employee scanner next to it. Now, I'm sure most of you are thinking some advanced hacking techniques are needed, like figuring out how the keycard scanner works, then making a fake card with the right data on it, or something else that's like movie-esque. But nah, you want to know the real way you defeat those door security? You go and buy a cheap $1 spray air freshener or a perfume bottle, and you point it directly at the top of where those doors meet, and you spray a tiny bit. Some office and door combos have a sensor at the top in case of a fire or other type of emergency. So by spraying a thick spray near the sensor will trip up and assume there's a fire and lock itself, letting you open the doors normally without a card, and in many cases, no alarms will go off. So you'd be in the clear to walk in like nothing happened. For network testing, there's too many tools to pick from, so I'll just give one quick and popular example, namely Nmap, which is a network scanner
Ziomek dosłownie dał tutorial, kurwa, jak się do biura włamać.
that can identify hosts, services, open ports on a network, devices, operating systems, and even some vulnerabilities directly. For social engineering, I already discussed this in part 1, but a quick refresher. It's basically pretending you're someone that's an authority or coworker, and you're trying to trick an actual employee with access and credentials to either give you direct access to something or account details which you could later on use yourself. You might also be tasked with sending out internal phishing emails to check to see if the employees at the company you're targeting have enough training and security sense not to fall for obvious traps. And like I mentioned in the last clip, you're not just tasked with doing hacks or scans. A huge part of hacking work is writing detailed reports describing exactly what issues exist and how they will be used to gain access so they can be fixed or addressed in some way. I can believe Jason did all these tasks. Nothing here requires any crazy training or hacking or coding ability. Though his stories about it keep changing, especially after the recent drama started coming out. After it came out, he kept reducing and toning down what he did. When giving answers on his stream, how much was exaggeration, how much was lying, and was actually true, I have no clue. I'm not super inclined to believe his words, but there's at least nothing wrong with any of these statements here. Alright, last topic, we have Jason's famous Mr. Robot claims.
I don't like Mr. Robot because they took some information that they should not have taken from a write-up that I did on some puzzles that I solved at DEF CON.
Czy ten typ właśnie mówi, że kurwa serial był inspirowany stary jego wyczynami na jakimś turnieju hakerskim? Nie, powiedzcie, czy ja dobrze zrozumiałem, czy to o coś innego chodzi?
And then they put him into an episode of the show, and I found out about it. And the only source for that knowledge was my write-up. Don't do that. You'll always be bad. Do you want to know what the solution for that was? Do you want to know what one of the solutions for that was? It was the Puzzle Master's personal cell phone number, to which he got thousands of calls. Maybe don't put things in your episode if you don't know what it is. Idiots. Alright, so the reason I don't like Mr. Robot. This right here is my write-up for the DEF CON 22 Badge Challenge. Went viral as hell inside of the hacking communities. And now let's go to Mr. Robot's Twitter. Understand that this was the only place in the world that this was listed. Mr. Robot reposted this right here. That's that same string.
Okay, first of all, Jason's write-up wasn't the only place they could have found the puzzle. Popular sites like Wire have it front and center in an article. DEF CON itself still has it available too, and lots of other teams posted about it too. So no, Jason didn't have the only write-up. There were multiple teams at DEF CON that solved the bad challenge, and they all had their own write-ups posted shortly thereafter. Here's a write-up from Elegant, and if we look just a tiny bit below, we can see he also included the pamphlet picture as well, plus the original number series, and the decrypted letters portion. So no, by no definition was Jason's write-up the only one, or even the most viral and popular one. I even went and checked on the Wayback Machine to see how many notes his Tumblr write-up had on August 17th, 2014. This is 5 days after the original publication date. We can see there's 27 notes, not exactly crazy viral or anything. I then went and checked September 13th, 2016. This is one day before the Mr. Robot tweet, and at this date he had 115 notes. Not exactly viral or huge reach even after more than 2 years of this post being up. Plus, he was posting and sharing his write-up on Twitter and Reddit multiple times during these 2 years. Now, if we check roughly 2 weeks after the Mr. Robot tweet, we can see on September 26, 2016 he has 162 notes, or roughly a 41% increase in notes after he piggybacked on the Mr. Robot tweet to drive traffic to his write-up. Next, let's look a bit closer at the original pamphlet code series. Since we know the puzzle creator is lost, we can cross out his signature at the end. We're left with a series of numbers ranging from 1 up to 25. What's that common thing we're all using to discuss all of this that's roughly 25 letters? I'm sure lots of you have probably guessed it's the English alphabet. We can do a simple number to letter conversion, and we can get the following string. Now, let's look at that Mr. Robot tweet again. It's the same thing without the lost handle. This was truly impossible to figure out. My sarcasm aside, this is step 1 of the puzzle, and I mean that step 1 literally. This is part of what Jason is claiming is his unique, only in his write-up knowledge that Mr. Robot
Co ty gadasz, kurwa? Chcesz mi powiedzieć, że on się stary... Ja trudniejsze zagadki logiczne w voice'ach rozwiązywałem, kurwa. A ziomek tak, zamienił cyferki na literki i to tyle?
He's claiming Mr. Robot stole the puzzle starting line from his write-up. I honestly can't tell if he's being serious with this, or if this is actually just like a decade-long social engineering experiment plus a little trolling mixed in. Anyways, let's pull up Elegant's walkthrough for the puzzle and see what they did from here. After they converted the numbers to letters, they did a road 13 on it. Road 13 is a simple letter substitution cipher. Basically, the letters of A to M are moved 13 letters up, and the letters N to Z are moved 13 letters back. Then we get the following string.
Ale on mówi, że to jest ta jego unikalna strategia na rozwiązanie tej zagadki, kurwa.
Parent pages will help you find your calling, but don't be duped. Cut down the woods, they be air dish. Lost. Okay, now there's a few clues in the string, notably parent pages at the start. If we search this up, we'd find the parent numbers Wikipedia page. Thankfully, we don't need to worry about any crazy math stuff, and we just need the function pfn results, which is the row of 3, 0, 2, 3, etc. Next, we need the second part of the string clue, the woods, they be air dish. If we search up those words, we'd find the air dish woods numbers Wikipedia page. Again, we don't need to worry about the math behind this, we just need the first few air dish woods numbers, namely 16, 22, 34, 36, 46, and 56. The next part basically relies on a separate pamphlet that has additional numbers. Here's what the original DEF CON 1 looked like. Anyways, we just need to pull these numbers out that are vertical and horizontal. If we look at the number set, we can realize their hex values and we can convert them to ASCII characters to get the following string. The last step needed to solve this is part of the clue, cut down the woods, they be air dish. So we'll remove those matches, which leaves us with 251, a secret exclamation mark, which was where the Mr. Robot DEF CON 22 Bad Challenge reference stops in the Mr. Robot episode. The elegant write-up continues for a fair bit more, but let's stop here since this was the end of the context we needed for the Mr. Robot claims. Seeing as we could solve the Mr. Robot tweet challenge using Elegant's write-up, it proves Jason's write-up wasn't the only place that had this knowledge. Now, to some other important points, Mr. Robot has consultants with the tech stuff for the show. If we look at who's a consultant for the show, oh, Jeff Moss is a consultant for the show. For those of you who don't know who that is, he's known as Dark Tangent and he's the founder of the DEF CON conference. So let me spell
Jaki zwrot akcji, stary. Yeah,
it out for everyone. The guy who founded DEF CON and knows what goes on at DEF CON is a consultant on Mr. Robot and decided to use a puzzle from DEF CON, his own conference, on the show. Anyways, another issue, Jason blamed Mr. Robot for sharing Lost's phone number. First of all, this phone number isn't Lost's actual personal phone number. Lost is the main puzzle creator for DEF CON since like 2022 and an actual hacker plus security engineer. There's no way as part of a simple puzzle he'd be releasing his own personal phone number as the place to call to get a clue for additional steps. Second, Lost was happy and honored that Mr. Robot included his puzzle as part of the show. And if we check Lost's Instagram, we can even see he joined Mr. Robot at some point as an additional creative consultant. So clearly there's no bad blood between Mr. Robot, Lost, and the other DEF CON adjacent people. The entire beef and issues were Jason's own made-up story. With that, let's wrap this part up. There's probably a lot more hacking stories I didn't find or touch on from Jason, but given how basically none of his stories stand up to scrutiny, it likely doesn't matter too much. Something else to note, ever since the second big wave of drama started, Jason has also gone and started changing his stories and toning down his claims. In fact, in one stream just a few days ago, straight from the horse's mouth, we have this.
What kind of dev work did you do at Blizzard? I didn't do any dev work at Blizzard. I've never said that I did. The internet has done some weird shit.
O nie, no proszę cię.
Where they said like, oh, he said he's a dev for 20 years at Blizzard.
Seeing as how now he admits to never being a dev and never did dev work at Blizzard, I wonder how long we need to wait for this new confession saying he was never a hacker and we were all lying and putting words in his mouth. Truly insane behavior, dude.
Ja pierdolę, ty. Tobiasz Gaming ustawił swoje manhunty jeszcze. To jest... Nie wiem co gorsze, szczerze. To, że Pirate Software nigdy nie był hakerem, czy to, że Tobiasz Gaming ustawiał swoje manhunty. Koniec, kurwa. Nie wiem, czy będą jeszcze jakieś odcinki tego. Nie wiem, czy będziemy je oglądać. O Jezu. Chyba będzie. Chyba będzie, kurwa. 4. epizod jeszcze. Szkoda prądu, szczerze.